Thank you for being here today. We, in Group 7, would like to discuss why information technology is destroying the environment. In today's agenda, we'll cover what is IT, the increased technology usage, how global warming coincides with IT, the carbon footprint of manufacturing, disposal, and the use of technology, also the energy requirements of data centers, and concluding remarks. What is IT? The Webster Dictionary defines information technology as the use of any computers, storage, networking, and other physical devices, infrastructure, and process to create, process, store, secure, and exchange all forms of electronic data. Now, I'd like to pass it over to Fahim to speak to us about the increased speed of computing accompanied by the reduction in overall costs and how that has increased the prevalence of IT in all areas of society today.
Since the beginning of Industrial Revolution, humans have been advancing technologically at an exponential rate. Just to give an idea of the immense improvement in technology, we can take a look at the number of computations that the most powerful computers of different eras could perform. Computers built in the 50s and 60s could compute less than 100 computations per second, whereas computers now in this 21st century can perform several billion computations a second. The surprising fact is, despite this tremendous increase in quality, the overall price that the consumer has to pay has decreased over time. This graph shows how the evolving of hardware from electromechanical systems to integrated circuit has meant that a consumer can now get a significant amount of more computation power from $1,000 than they could 100 years ago. The less cost and increasing efficiency achieved through use of IT has made information technology a necessity in this 21st century. There has been more and more usage of computers in all areas, from industrial and manufacturing to the residential, educational, health, and office sectors. In Canada alone, the proportion of workers using a computer at their main job has risen from 33% in 1989 to 57% in the year 2000. The consumers of technology, directly or indirectly, now involve the majority of the human population on this planet.
Thanks, Fahim. Speaking of consumers and their ever-increasing appetite for what's new, consumerism is a social and economic order and ideology that encourages the acquisition of goods and services in ever-increasing amounts. Now, we've built up this appetite for what's new and cutting edge. We also seem to discard the older model as junk just because there's a newer option available. The retail marketplace is changing. There's an increased use of technology in stores. The internet has affected the way we all shop today. The financial sector can be accessed by people with little to no training, and advertising is targeting individuals more and more based on their personalized web traffic. Now Fahim will speak to you about how IT affects the environment and how it correlates to the increased prevalence of technology.
Although human lives have become easier and more convenient over the years, we have also seen a trend in rising temperature and climate change all across the globe. The heat map of the globe shows a tremendous increase in heat in the last couple of decades alone. The changes can be seen visually all around us in various physical and biological forms, such as melting of glaciers, animal migration, sea level rises, and snow cover declines. What we are trying to evaluate is if the two things are correlated. Is the improvement and increase in IT negatively affecting the environment?
Thanks, Fahim. Now Ian will detail the environmental costs of creating and disposing of information technology and how consumerism affects the life cycle of technology. Ian?
The demand for creating sustaining information technology is immense. According to Statista, 537 million units of personal computers were shipped to consumers in 2014 alone. The impact of computers on the environment can be expressed by the carbon footprint. Carbon footprint is a measure of the sum of all greenhouse gas emissions produced by a single entity, and almost 60% of a computer's carbon footprint is linked to its manufacturing process. Large industrial factories and vast quantities of raw materials are necessary in order to produce a single computer, which leads to some serious consequences for the environment. Computers are built using metals and toxic chemicals which are not normally found in the environment. Lead, arsenic, mercury, and lithium are just some of the materials used to manufacture electronics, shown in the breakdown on the right. Each of these materials pose a serious risk to plants and animals if not properly isolated from the surrounding environment. The manufacturing process itself emits hazardous greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, produces solid waste from excess materials, and leads to chemical runoff into waterways. Looking on the graph to the left, to produce a single computer, it takes 22 kilograms of chemicals, 240 kilograms of fossil fuels to provide the energy, and a staggering 1,500 kilograms of water. With the constant increase in demand for more computers, the impact of waste from manufacturing becomes more prevalent. According to a survey conducted by Sims Lifecycle Services, an IT services company, approximately 70% of companies replace their IT equipment every 4 years. This trend is also observable in the consumer population, with popular devices such as smartphones and tablets being replaced on an annual basis. Current product life cycles are extremely short relative to the time it takes for raw materials to replenish or become naturally available again. This creates a large strain on the environment as the Earth simply cannot sustain the rate of consumption of resources happening right now. Obsolete or faulty equipment can be reused or recycled to help alleviate the finite supply of resources. However, companies often choose to dispose of equipment directly as waste instead because it is the most cost-effective option. Disposal of electronic waste to landfills means that no material is recovered, and the large carbon footprint created from manufacturing and operation remains untouched. Toxic substances eventually leak over time, which pose a health risk to the environment and humans. Most computer components do not completely degrade quickly, and some components such as batteries contain metals that leak during decomposition, which can permeate into the soil, water, air, and eventually human bodies. Other materials such as plastic remain intact for long periods of time with no clean method of disposal. Inadequate regulations and management of electronic waste further add to the pollution to the environment. Disposal can be up to 15 times cheaper in developing nations than it is in developed nations, and 75% of companies pay other companies to dispose electronics for them. A common practice found in third world countries is to simply burn electronic components without much regard for the animals and the people inhaling the toxic fumes on a regular basis.
Thanks, Ian. Now it's back to Fahim, and he's going to talk about the environmental impact of operating IT and introduce us to data centers. Fahim?
Until now, we have only talked about the damage caused to the environment by building and disposal of computers. We also have to consider the environmental impact they have during their lifetime. Computers consume electricity. Since the volume of computers worldwide is huge, the electricity consumption amount is quite significant as well. Many of the sources of electricity, depending on the location of the globe, are being provided from non-renewable energy sources, which produces carbon dioxide again. Depending on the type of computer, type of energy used, etc., on average, computers tend to create 40 to 80 grams of emissions per hour throughout their electricity use. Cleaning computers sometimes uses the application of chlorofluorocarbon, which is damaging to the environment as well. A study in 2009 performed by Harvard physicist Alex Wisner-Gross shows some interesting characteristics of computers and the internet. He calculated the carbon emissions associated with individual Google searches. It was found that 20 milligrams of carbon dioxide is generated every second someone is using a simple website. Although this is a very insignificant number on its own, we have to consider the fact that because of the advancement of IT, Internet is being accessed daily all over the world by millions of people, from students in schools, universities, to researchers, office, and industry workers. Nearly every facility in developed countries and most facilities in developing countries uses computer and internet for simplicity and faster processing speed. Approximately 35 billion minutes are logged online every month from users worldwide. Quick calculation shows that this would generate 42 billion grams of carbon dioxide worldwide simply from internet usage. How does accessing internet lead to carbon dioxide emission, one might ask? The answer lies in the way internet functions. All the data of the internet are stored in various servers located in numerous data center buildings. Running these servers 24 hours a day, 7 times a week, requires high electricity usage. The more data it has to process, the more electricity is used, and hence more emissions are generated. The United States alone in 2005 had 10.3 million data centers, and they consumed enough power in 1 year that could be used to power the entire United Kingdom for 2 months. These data centers also give out heat that contributes to global warming. Although new data center models with the objective of cool downs and reduction of carbon footprint has been suggested in Japan, how many data centers are actually using and implementing this new technology is the real question. And although big companies like Google and Yahoo are taking steps to reduce their emissions from their data centers, until smaller search engines and other companies also start to follow the same steps, the use of information technology will continue to contribute to greenhouse gas emissions.
Thanks again, Fahim. US data centers are using more electricity than they need. In 2013, it took 34 power plants, each capable of generating 500 megawatts of electricity, to power all the data centers in operation. By 2020, it's projected the nation will need another 17 similarly sized power plants to meet projected data center energy demands as economic activity becomes increasingly digital. Any increase in the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity will result in an increase in carbon emissions. Nationwide, data centers in total used 91 billion kilowatt hours of electrical energy in 2013, and they'll be using 139 billion kilowatt hours by 2020, a 53% increase. This also increases the CO2 emissions by 51% to a whopping 147 million metric tons by the year 2020. And in conclusion, due to the increased reliance on IT in every sector, matched with our rampant consumerism, there is a huge cost in the environment for creating and disposing of IT equipment. There is also a significant cost to simply run our technology when we go online or store data. Information technology is destroying our environment. If we're not careful, these pictures will be our reality. Thank you.